Hello all, my name is Abdurrahman and welcome to the SQL tutorial series. In this series, I will be talking about database, DBMS, NRDBMS, MySQL, and in this series, I will be coding in the MySQL and I am starting to write the program in the MySQL, and we are going to create tables, databases, and etc. So let's go ahead and get into it. So SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is basically a language used by databases. This language allows to handle the information using the tables and shows a language to query these tables and other objects related to views, functions, procedures, etc. Most of the databases like SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, MariaDB handle this language with some extensions and with some variations to handle this data. With SQL, you can insert, delete, and update your data. You can also create, delete, or alter database objects with SQL. So guys, in this video we are going to talk about introduction to DBMS and in this video I am going to cover the topics like what is data, like you have to understand. For understanding what is DBMS, we need to understand the data and what is database system, what is database, and characteristics of database system database management system. Sorry. And then I am going to cover advantages of DBMS, disadvantages of DBMS, types of databases, what is relational database, what is non-relational database, advantages of non-relational database, and what is RDBMS, and the last one is what is NRDBMS. So guys, I will be starting DBMS from the very low level. I will even not talk about DBMS first. I will talk about database system. Before that, I will talk about data. Okay, so for learning DBMS, we need to learn data, database system, database, and etc. Okay, so before learning what is database system, we need to learn what is data. Okay, so what is data? Data is a collection of distinct small unit of information. It can be used in variety of forms like text, numbers, bytes, videos, media, text, and etc. So it can be stored in pieces of paper or electronic memory and etc. So we have learnt about what is data. Data is a collection of distinct small unit of information, right? So now we have learnt about data, and now we need to learn about database system. What is database system? Many companies have its own database systems like Facebook, Amazon, Flipkart, and etc. has its own database system. Now database system is comprised of two things. It's comprised of two things. One is database and another is DBMS. So database system is comprised of two things. One is database and another is DBMS. So here, if I talk about database, then a database is an organized collection of data so that it can be easily accessed and managed. You can organize the data into tables, rows, and columns, and index it to make it easier to find the relevant information. Database handlers create a database in such a way that only one set of software program provides access to data to all the users. The main purpose of database is to operate a large amount of information by storing, retrieving, and managing the data. Okay, so what the database handlers do? They create a database, in such a way that the only one set of software program provides access of the data to all the users. The main purpose of database is to operate a large amount of information by storing, retrieving and managing the data. Nowadays, there are many dynamic websites on the World Wide Web which are handled through databases. For example, a model that checks the availability of the rooms in an hotel, right? So it checks the availability, whether it has how many beds, how many rooms it has, it's empty or it's full, it checks. And it's an example of a dynamic website that uses a database. Now, in database, we have two terms. In database, we have two terms. One is structured and unstructured. What is structured and unstructured data? So first of all, what is structured data? Structured data is a database with which we can store the data in a particular structure or in a particular shape. Okay, structured data means structured data is such a database with which we can store the data in a particular structure or in a particular shape. And unstructured data mean where it has no particular structure or particular shape. Okay. For example, let's say the data of a university is structured. Why it is structured? Because it has a particular structure. And which structure it has? So the most important structure which is used for structured database is RDBMS, which is Relational Database Management System. So RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So what is its definition? What is RDBMS? So before learning what is RDBMS, we need to learn what is DBMS. What is DBMS? Which is Database Management Structure. So what is DBMS? I will talk about RDBMS in the end. So first of all, let's talk about DBMS. So now let's say I have a lot of data where I have shared that data on servers, pen drives, hard disks, CDs and etc. whatever. Now obviously the user will collect the user will collect the data and then they will do some operations like insertion, deletion, update. Okay. So for performing all of these operations, which operations? Insert, delete and update. These three are known as operations. So for performing all of this operation, we should have some system, right? So for that we need to have some system. So that system is known as DBMS, Database Management System. Database management system have collection of operations. Database management system have collection of operations which provides easiness so that the user should perform the operations easily in the database. Database management system is software which is used to manage the data like MySQL, Oracle, etc. are a very popular commercial databases which is used in different applications. So we have learnt about what is data, right? So we have learnt about what is data, what is database. We have learnt about what is data, what is database system, what is database, what is DBMS. And now we have to learn about characteristics of DBMS. What we have to learn about? Characteristics of DBMS. So now I will talk about characteristics of DBMS. So guys, I will be telling the 15 characteristics of DBMS, Database Management System. The first characteristic of DBMS is DBMS these days is very realistic and real world entities are used to design its architecture. Also, behavior and attributes are used by DBMS. To simplify it, we can take an example of an organization database where employee is an entity and his employee ID is an attribute. And this is the first characteristic of DBMS. To simplify it, we can take an example of an organization database where employee is an entity and his employee's ID is an attribute. So the other characteristic of DBMS is self-describing nature. Before DBMS, a traditional file management system was used for storing the information and the data. So a traditional file management system, I will be not be telling you the detail about it. So I will be giving the link in the description of what is traditional file management system. So please read that. So before DBMS, what it is used? A traditional file management system was used for storing the information and the data. There was no concept of definition in relational file management system like we have in DBMS. A DBMS should be self-describing nature, as it's not only contains the database itself, also the metadata. What it contains? But also the metadata. A metadata, data about data, defines and describes not only the extent, type, structure and format of all the data, but also relationship between data. This data represents itself that what actions should be taken on it. And the third one is asset properties. Support asset properties. Any DBMS is able to support asset properties. ACID, ACID stands for accuracy, completeness, isolation and durability. Okay, so this is the ACID stands for accuracy, completeness, isolation and durability. So ACID can be written in the capital letters so that it can be easily understandable. So that accuracy, completeness and the isolation and durability properties. So in short form, it's known as ACID. It is made sure in every DBMS that the real purpose of data should not be lost while performing transactions like delete, insert and update. So while you are performing the operations like delete, insert and update, is that the data should not be lost. The data should not be deleted or much. Okay. So now let's take an example of if an employee's name is updated there, and then it should be make sure that there is no duplicate data and no mismatch of employee information. And the fourth one is concurrent use of database. There are many chances that the user will be accessing the data at the same time. They may require altering the database system concurrently. At that time, DBMS supports them to concurrently use database without any problem. With the help of concurrency, with the help of concurrency, economy of the system can be increased. For example, employees of the railway, right? So let's take an example of the employees of the railway. Employees of the railway reservation system can book and access the tickets for the passengers concurrently. Every employee can see on his own interface that how many seats are available, right? So the fifth characteristic of DBMS is isolation between data and the programs. Isolation between data and the programs. Program data. Program data independence provides a big relief to the database users in traditional file management system. Structure of data files was defined in the application program so that the user had no challenge. The user had to change all the programs that are using that particular data file. But in DBMS, structure of the data files is not stored in the program, but it is stored in system catalog. With the help of this internal improvement of the data efficiency or any changes in the data do not have any effect on the application software. So this is the fifth characteristic of DBMS. So the sixth one is transactions. Transactions are a bunch of actions that are done to bring database from one consistent state to new consistent state. Traditional file management system did not have this feature. Transaction is always atomic, which means it can never be further divided. It can only be completed or uncompleted. For example, a person wants to credit the money from his account to another person's account. What? I am taking an example. So a person wants to credit his, let's say, the X person. The name of the person is X and the name of the other person is Y. So the X person wants to credit the money from his account to the Y person account. Then transaction will be complete if he sends money and another guy receives and the Y guy receives his money. Anything other than this can lead to an inconsistent transactions. Seventh one. So we have learnt about 6. So we didn't need to learn of this. This is a theory, so right. So we need to understand it. So this is the seventh characteristic of DBMS is data persistence. Persistence means if the data is not removed explicitly, then all the data will be maintained in DBMS. If any system failure happens, then the lifespan of data stored in the DBMS will be decided by the users directly or indirectly. Any data stored in the DBMS can never be lost if system failure happens in between any transaction. Okay, so for example, a person, the same example I am taking, that which I have taken just before now. So a person wants to credit money from his account to another person's account. So while he is crediting the money to the another person's account, then the failure happens in between, then it will be rolled back or fully completed, but data will be never at risk. This is a characteristic. And the eighth one is backup and recovery. There are many chances of failure of the whole database. At that time, no one will be able to get the database back, and for sure company will be in the big loss, very big loss. Like for example, let's take the example of the Facebook. So for example, let's say Facebook is a very big company, as you know everyone. So for example, if the company is the database, so if the failure happens, if the whole database is deleted, then that company will be in very very big loss, right? So the only solution is to take the backup of database whenever it is needed. It can be stored back. A database must have this characteristic to enable more effectiveness. This is very useful. And ninth one is again data persistence. And this is one of the most important characteristic of database management system, DBMS. Integrity ensures the quality and the reliability of the database system. It protects unauthorized access to the database and makes it more secure. It brings only consistent and accurate data into the database. So this is one of the most important characteristic of DBMS. And the 10th one is multiple views. Multiple views. Users can have multiple views of database depending on the department and interest. DBMS database management system supports multiple views of the database to the users. For example, let's say a user. So for example, let's say you are there and I am there, and the the user of the teaching department. I am the user of the teaching department, and I have a different view, and so you are the user of a hostel department, okay, and you will be having the different view. So this feature helps users to have somewhat security, because users of the other departments, like some other departments, so the teaching department cannot access the hostel department's data, right? So this feature helps the user to have somewhat security, because users of the other departments cannot access their data, their files. And the 11th, so we have completed 10 characteristics of DBMS. So this is the 11th characteristic of DBMS. Stores any kind of data. A database management system should be able to store any kind of data. It should not be restricted to the employee name, salary and address. Any kind of data that exists in the real world can be stored in the DBMS, because we need to work with all kinds of the data that is present around us, right? So the database management system should be able to store any kind of data. Like for example, let's say, have you ever seen Excel sheet? If you have seen, there will be some boxes, right? Cells, rows and columns. So in each cell, on the top of it, I have stored the employee name, and beside that I have given the salary of the employee, and then I have given their address, and beside that I have given what he works, which laptop he has, and which company, everything I have given. So it should not be restricted that these are different kinds of data, so that we can't enter this different kind of data, okay. So it should not say that, so we have given the name of an employee name, so you should give the name of another employee. So not. Database management system should be able to store any kind of data. It should not be restricted to employee name, salary and address. Any kind of data that exists in the real world can be stored. Everything, video, audio, text, file, everything real world can be stored in DBMS, because we need to work with all kinds of data that is present in this world around us. And the 12th one is security. DBMS provides security to the data stored in it, because all the users have rights to access the database. So some of the users can access the whole database, while others can access a small part of the database. So now let's take an example. A computer network lecturer. So for example, let's say I am working in a department, computer department or teaching some department. So I am teaching the computer. computer network. So and the lecture example. Okay, so I can only access the files that are related to the computer subjects. Like for example, what I am teaching, so I can access that files only, which are related to the computer subjects, whatever the subjects I am teaching. But my department HOD, the HOD of my department can access all the files of the subjects that are related to their department. For example, let's say I am the lecturer of the computer network and I am teaching the computer, and you are the lecturer of a science, something, biology, anything. Okay, so then you can access your files. I can access only my files which are related to computer. You can access the files which are related to the science, whatever. But the department, our department HOD can access my file, your file, and whosoever are there, he can access the files of all of the subjects that are related to their department, which are related to their department. And the 13th one is represents complex relationship between data. Data stored in database is connected with each other, and a relationship is made in between data. DBMS should be able to represent that complex relationship between the data to make the efficient and accurate use of data. Okay, so the 14th one is query language, which is query language. Queries are used to retrieve and manipulate data, but DBMS is armed by the strong query language that makes it more effective and efficient. And users have the power to retrieve any kind of data that they want from the database by applying different sets of the queries. The file-based system has not this luxury of the query language. The file management system something was there, so it does not have this luxury of the query language. And the 15th one is cost. The cost of the DBMS is high as compared to the other software and technology available in the market. But if you consider the long run, then database is way far better, because its maintenance and cost will be almost nothing. So we have talked about what is DBMS, what is database, what is data, what is database, what is DBMS, what is database system, and we have learnt about characteristics of DBMS. Now we have to learn about advantages, disadvantages of DBMS, and etc. Right? So now I will be talking about advantages of DBMS. So the advantages of DBMS are controls database redundancy. It controls database redundancy. It can control the data redundancy because it stores all the data in one single database, and that recorded data is placed in the database. And that recorded data is placed in the database. And the other one is, the second advantage of DBMS is data sharing. In DBMS database management system, the authorized users of an organization can share the data among the multiple users. Okay, so in DBMS, the authorized users of an organization can share the data among the multiple users. So this is the third one. And okay, data sharing. Okay, so reduce time. It reduces development time and maintenance need. Okay, so backup. It provides backup and recovery subsystems which create automatic backup of data from hardware and software failures. and restore the data if required. For example, like I have taken the example, right? So here in the characteristics we were talking about, like if the failure happens, then the data is going to be lost. I have taken the example of the Facebook company, right? Whatever the data that the Facebook company has, and if the data is lost, then the company will be at the big loss, right? So it has, which create automatic backup of data from hardware and software failures, and there is a backup. It provides backup and recovery subsystems in DBMS, right? So that if the any failure happens, then it restores the data, whatever the data is lost. So the another one is multiple user interface. It provides different types of users interfaces like graphical user interface, UI, application program interface, and the last one is easily maintenance. I have not a slide for this. So it can be easily maintainable due to the centralized nature of the database systems. Now let's talk about the disadvantages of DBMS. So let's go ahead. So these are the disadvantages of, this is the first disadvantage of DBMS: cost of hardware and software. It requires a high speed of data processor and a large memory size to run the DBMS software. If you want to run the DBMS software, and it requires a high speed of data processor and a large memory size. And the second one is size. It occupies a large space of disks and large memory to run them efficiently. And the third one is complexity. Database system creates additional complexity requirements. Database system creates additional complexity requirements. And the last one is higher impact of failure. Failure is highly impacted the database, because in most of the organizations all the data stored in a single database, and if the database is damaged due to the electric failure or database corruption, then the data may be lost forever. So data will be lost forever. So now we have talked about, right, what is data, what is database, what is database system, what is database, what is DBMS, and we have talked about characteristics of DBMS, disadvantages of DBMS, and now we have to talk about the types of databases. What do we have to talk about? We have to talk about types of databases. So let's talk about it. So types of databases. There are some types of databases like centralized database, distributed database, relational database, NoSQL database, cloud database, object-oriented database, network database, personal database, operational database, enterprise database, and etc. and many more. So there are many types of databases, like I have told you, right? So from all of these databases, types of databases, I will talk about two main databases, two main types of databases, which are relational database and NoSQL database, or people call it non-relational database. So I will be talking about this one. So I will be talking about the relational database, and I am going to talk about NoSQL database. I think you hear from the people that they will also say non-relational database. Okay, so I will be rubbing. Okay, so anyhow, so I am going to talk about this main. So first of all, I will talk about relational database. What I will talk about? I will talk about relational database. Relational database is based on the relational data model, which stores the data in the form of rows and columns, and it together forms a table. So, relational database is based on the relational data model, which stores the data in the form of rows, right? So we store the data in the form of rows. So rows means I will be showing you here only. Okay, so we will be storing the data in the form of rows. These are the rows. These are the rows. And we will be storing the data in the form of columns also. Like you will be one column, here one column, and here one column. So it's form a table, right? So in technical form we say it relation. What we say? To the table in technical form we called it relation. A relational database uses SQL for storing, manipulating as well as maintaining the data. Each table in the database carries a key that makes the data unique from others. Examples of relational databases are MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and etc. So they have some versions like Microsoft SQL servers. Everyone has its own version. Okay, so I will be taking the arrow. Okay, so now let's talk about non-relational database. What talk about non-relational database? Non-relational database is a type of database that is used for storing a wide range of data sets. It's not only not a relational database as it stores the data in the tabular form, but in several different ways. Like relational database stores the data in the form of rows and columns, which forms a table, and in technically we say it relation, right? So it stores the data in that particular table. How it stores it and how it stores it, I will be talking about that in the next video, right? So anyhow, it does not store the data in the that one only. What? It does not store the data in the tabular form only, but it can store the data in several ways. It came into existence when the demand for building modern applications increased. Thus, non-relational database presented a wide variety of database technologies in response to the demands. Okay? So now we have talked about non-relational database. So now let's talk about the advantages of non-relational database. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So advantages of non-relational databases are: it enables good productivity in the application development, as it's not required to store the data in the structured format. It's a better option for managing the handling large sets. It provides high scalability. Users can quickly access the data from the database through the key value. So what is the key value? We will be learning that in the next tutorial. So now I will talk about how the relational database store the data in the tables when we want to create a relational database. So at the time we can use RDBMS, which is Relational Database Management System. So I will be talking about what is RDBMS. Relational Database Management System. RDBMS stands for Relational Database Management System. So the software used to store, manage, query and retrieve the data stored in a relational database is called a Relational Database Management System, RDBMS. The RDBMS provides an interface between the users and applications and the database, as well as administrative functions for managing the data storage, access, and the performance. So RDBMS is used to store, manage, query, and retrieve the data stored in a relational database. So it can manage, it can store and query and retrieve the data which is stored in the relational database is called RDBMS, which is Relational Database Management System. So RDBMS provides an interface between the users and applications and the database, as well as administrative functions for managing the data storage, access, and performance. And RDBMS uses something known as SQL, which is Structured Query Language. SQL is a standardized language for interacting. SQL is a standardized language for interacting with RDBMS. So now just like RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, we can have Non-Relational Database Management System. In short form, it's known as NRDBMS. So we have in this, so till now we have learned about what is database and what is database system, what is database, what is data, what is DBMS, what is advantages and characteristics and disadvantages of DBMS. We have talked about relational data and non-relational data and the advantages of non-relational data. And now we have talked about RDBMS, which is Relational Database Management System. And now the final one, we are going to talk about NRDBMS, which is Non-Relational Database Management System. So now just like Relational Database Management System, we can have Non-Relational Database Management System, which is NRDBMS, and this helps the users to create and maintain in non-relational databases like MongoDB, Mongo Database, DynamoDB, Dynamo Database, Firebase, and many more, and etc. So unlike RDBMS, we have SQL, which is a standard language. Like the SQL, the RDBMS has the SQL, which is the standard language which can interact with all of them, right? But in NRDBMS, in non-relational database management system, there is no standard language for interacting with non-relational database management system. We can't interact it. Okay? So we can interact the non-relational database management system. So non-relational database management system will implement their own language for performing administrative operations on the database. So anyhow, we have talked about all of the things, but I will be talking some more like primary key with for understanding. So what is primary key? For example, let's say like for example, you have a table. In the table there is some persons, there are like 1 person, 2 person, there are some more person, 5 persons total, example. And so example, take as students, they are students and their ID is, their roll number is 1 2 3 4 5, all of them. Okay, and everyone reads different language, but few students have their same names and have their same subjects. Okay, they can speak same language. So in the database, how can we differentiate the differences between them? How can we differentiate the difference between them? So for that, primary key is there. If everything is same, so here two people are same, but in database like the many people, lots of and millions of people will be the names, their age, something will be same, almost same, right? So primary key is useful in this way. So I will be talking about primary key tables and etc in the next tutorials. So anyhow guys, that's all for this video, and I want to see you guys in the next tutorial. So thanks for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, bye bye.